Hi, Chuck Hawley from West Marine. One of the 5 safety items required on a boat under the federal regulations is to have some sort of horn or whistle or sound producing device. And when we started rehearsing this video, we said, we really want to know what the accurate law is. And it's kind of confusing. So we went to where we always go when we want to know the answers to questions about seamanship, Chapman's Piloting and Seamanship. On page 156, it goes through the laws on when you're supposed to have a whistle or a bell or a horn on recreational boats. Now, let's start by talking about when do you use a horn? Well, the main reason you use a horn is to indicate when you're maneuvering. For example, if you're passing a boat and you're passing on one side versus the other, or if you're meeting bow to bow, to determine if you pass port to port or starboard to starboard. You can also use a horn to indicate danger. For example, you can give 5 quick blasts, and that indicates that there's danger. Generally, you're going to hear this from a larger ship as you cut across their bow. So there are a variety of good reasons to have a horn or a whistle or a bell on board a boat. The challenge is that under 40 feet, you're not actually required to have a horn or a whistle, but you can substitute what's called an efficient sound-making device. And I'm not exactly sure what that would end up being if it isn't one of these horns or whistles, but that's how the law reads. Over 40 feet, you're required to have a horn or a whistle and a bell. And incidentally, the frequency of the horn and the size of the bell is called out in the regulations. So it's worth doing a little extra research to make sure that what you're buying meets the requirements. So what are some of the ways of having a horn on board a boat? Well, a lot of us will end up just having something like this, a portable horn that has a can of liquefied gas in it, a little plastic trumpet, and they're really loud, as you're probably aware, and we keep this in the cockpit, and if we want to indicate our intentions when we're in a crossing situation, we can pull out the horn. There are a variety of different styles. This happens to be kind of a neat idea. This is an air canister that you pump up with a small piston pump. You pump it up to about 100 psi, and that allows you to use this without putting gases into the atmosphere. So this is the eco horn. There are also smaller versions. If you've got just a small boat and you're really just doing this to meet the requirements of the law, because you don't normally give sound signals, you're out in open waters, you can get something like this and still have an efficient sound producing device. A relatively recent invention is using an electric horn. This uses a small transistor radio battery, and you click it, and out of the speaker comes a very loud sound. I forget how long this goes, but it can produce hundreds of blasts, and so you don't have to be putting gas into the atmosphere. So there are a whole variety of ways to do this. You can also, incidentally, use a whistle, but we think of whistles as more used for crew overboard and life jackets and that sort of thing, to grab attention to an individual, not necessarily for a vessel. If you have a powerboat, you might consider something like this, a trumpet horn. And these can either be air-powered or electrically powered. Stainless steel, you mount them permanently, you have a button at the helm, and you can let people know that you're coming or you're passing. And of course, the other option is to use a smaller horn like this, a little bit more compact, not quite as nice a sound, but these can be tucked away and they're not quite as obtrusive. If you don't want to carry a horn on board, but you're still required to have a sound producing device, something as simple as this whistle might do a job for you. They're really, really loud. They get people's attention, and if you have to signal to go to port, starboard, astern, or that you're in trouble, makes an effective way to get somebody's attention. A handy place to find all the required equipment for recreational boats is to refer to this chart in the annual catalog. This is the federal equipment requirements for boats, and on one chart it summarizes the 10 or 12 items that you're required to have on your vessel, also by the length of the vessel and whether you have power or a sailboat. Another way is if you're shopping in our stores, we have some really helpful signs that summarize the federal requirements on one single plaque. It is interesting when you look at all the requirements for what you're required to have on a recreational boat. It really falls down to 5 key safety items. You have to have PFDs for each person on board plus a throwable. You have to have a fire extinguisher. You have to, or more than one fire extinguisher. You have to have navigation lights. You have to have horns and whistles, and you have to have visual distress signals. Those 5 items are really the safety items that you're required to have on boats up to 65 feet. The other items, although they are important for pollution control and other purposes, aren't actually in the safety category. So it's remarkable that you can operate a 60-foot powerboat or sailboat and have a relatively small number of safety products on board. Well, we hope this video has been helpful on how to decide what kind of sound producing device to have on your boat. All of these items are of course available at West Marine stores and at West Marine online. Thanks for watching and safe boating.